cherry picking today's video. Must add for week 20 of the fantasy hockey season. We're getting closer and closer to the playoffs. Some players to add for this week. And then also, for some players that you can add, maybe forecasting for the playoffs as well. Have to start thinking about that if you're going to be making it to the playoffs. Have to get there first. But as always, the video is presented by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook. That link is in the description below to download that today. Let's get into the 6 players to add for week 20. All right, so the first guy we're going to be picking up is Owen Power on the Buffalo Sabres. 30% rostered, so not necessarily available for people in all leagues, I would say. If you're in those 12-man leagues, 12 to 14, I would say he's probably still available. Anything deeper, though, I'm assuming he's probably already going to be picked up. But since December 1st, he's top 30 amongst defensemen, in expected goals for. He has 16 points, 3 goals, tied 15th in high danger chances for with guys like Noah Hannafin, Thomas Harley. So creating a decent amount of offense, something we haven't necessarily always seen from Owen Power since coming into the league. He's, gotten the ball rolling a little bit more slower than what a lot of people, I would say, have anticipated for him, considering first overall pick. But he's a good asset to have in fantasy hockey right now. He fills the stat sheet pretty well. His ice time, pretty stagnant at around 21 to 22 minutes. Buffalo's offense is also cruising right now. One of the better ranked offenses in the NHL at their peak of their ratings right now for sure, and they're continuing to score, and he's been able to just feed off a ton of assists. I know he has 3 goals since the start of December. Obviously not a ton, but a decent amount of, obviously 13 assists there. And he's going to have games where you see against the Devils earlier in the month of February, he had 9 shots on goal and a 25-minute performance on the ice with an assist. Like, those are coming more frequently for Owen Power this year than we've seen in years past. If you're in need of a defenseman this week, you should be at the top of your list for sure. 30% rostered isn't a crazy number either with how he's been. All right, so another guy that's 30% rostered, and that's Will Cuyle on the New York Rangers. Left wing and right wing capabilities, 58 games played so far this year, 15 goals, 15 assists, 106 shots on goal so far this season, so a decent amount of number there. And then his hits number is a huge number for Will Cuyle here as a forward. 217 hits. Kiefer Sherwood just broke the record, being the fastest player in NHL history to 300 hits. 217 isn't that far behind. There's a chance Will Cuyle could finish with 100 or 300 hits this season as well. But I think recently we've seen Will Cuyle really pick it up. Playing on that line with Chris Kreider and Micah Zibanejad, only has a couple of power play points to his name so far this season, playing on that second unit. Obviously not going to crack that top unit with the top tier talent that they have on that first power play for the New York Rangers. So I doubt we see him jumping up to that spot, but still being able to produce at even strength, being able to throw the body around and fill that hits category for you, and even in points leagues, add those extra points. His shot numbers are definitely increasing a little bit here as well. So I definitely think Will Cuyle is a guy you want to add for this week, considering the Rangers played 4 games, and someone that you could probably hang on to. All right, the next guy we're picking up, and welcome back from injury, Boone Jenner on the Columbus Blue Jackets. 23% rostered, playing that center and left wing for Yahoo Fantasy Hockey Leagues in terms of his positions. 3 games played so far, doesn't have a goal yet, but 5 assists. Obviously really solid numbers there, playing on that second line with Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger, so 2 of the younger guys. He's also playing on the second power play with those guys. So if they continue to build chemistry, I think we'll have yet another dominant offensive line on this Columbus Blue Jackets team that teams will struggle to kind of defend, which is just adding to the ability that Columbus will continue to score. Getting any piece of this offense that's in a prominent role is key. And like I mentioned, second line, second power play, that's decently prominent. Who knows? The first power play could change, as Monahan comes back as well. Will there be room for Boone Jenner? Don't necessarily think that's his role, but there's a chance as they kind of figure out what's the best lineup when everybody is healthy on this Columbus team, because frankly, I don't really think that's actually happened this year. He used to he is a centerman by trade, but he hasn't really taken a ton of faceoffs since coming back. Only 20 faceoffs playing on that line, obviously with Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger as well. When Jenner is healthy, he fills the stat sheet to the best degree for a fantasy hockey forward. He gets points, he gets a lot of shots, hits, blocks. He had 7 shots, I believe, against Detroit the other night. So obviously a really good fantasy hockey player to own. We haven't seen him play on a Columbus team who's able to score at will like this in years. So I'm really curious to see kind of where the ceiling is for Boone Jenner on this like new age Columbus Blue Jackets. And I've talked about him a couple times this year, but Alex Laferriere on the Los Angeles Kings, currently 22% rostered, and he is on my must-add because he is back in a role where you can't really leave him on your waiver wire, especially on a Kings team that's starting, their offense is really starting to click right now, scoring a lot of goals in a lot of their games. He's back on that first power play. Solid month of February, maybe not necessarily in terms of like actual production, like stats on your stat sheet, so goals, like only 2 goals, but created a solid amount of offense. Top 25 in expected goals for amongst all players in the month of February, creating a ton of high danger scoring chances as well. He's playing with Kevin Fiala, who had his best month of the year by far, and then Quinton Byfield as well on that second line, and Quinton Byfield has been an assist machine. So I think this is a good time to add Laferriere. The Kings play 4 games this week as well, so could be a good streamer if you're in need of a right winger, but I think you could keep him on your team. You know, similar to Will Cuyle, gets a ton of shots, and he actually throws the body around a decent amount as well. Not as much as Will Cuyle, but he scores a few more goals than Cuyle does as well. So, all right, so another defenseman I think that, another defenseman that I think people can pick up this week is Ivan Provorov on the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's 12% rostered. Provorov hasn't necessarily been known for his scoring in the NHL. Like, he's had 30 to 40 point seasons, but especially this year, I want to say as well, because of how offensive a lot of the players on Columbus already are. And you have a guy like Zach Werenski too. He fills so many different voids that other teams don't have the necessary capabilities to fill. But Provorov has been a very solid like defensive defenseman, but he's starting to change that kind of narrative this season. Since the start of January, Provorov has the 20th most points amongst defensemen in the NHL with 13. Sure, his shot volume isn't as high as some of these other guys, like Cale Makar, obviously, but the offensive plays he's involved in are turning into goals and assists. The bottom line with Columbus is they're going to continue to score, and other than Zach Werenski, there is not another defenseman on the Blue Jackets that is in the offensive zone as much as Ivan Provorov. It might not be his prominent role necessarily, but he's playing 24 minutes a game, and he's on the second power play, and he's on the first penalty kill. We saw the second power play outperform the first power play in that game against Detroit. It's not going to happen every single game and not more frequently the second power play, but it's going to happen, and he's on the ice that much where he's going to be able to get those residual assists or get some blocks and some shots on net. So I think Provorov right now is really in an interesting spot because right now we'll kind of tell if he's going to be that secondary offensive defenseman that Columbus can kind of rely on. Like, he blocks a ton of shots, and in 3 out of the 7 games he played in February, he had at least 3 shots on goal. I think his month high, if you want to call it that, was 5 or 6 shots on goal. So he's starting to become a lot more offensive. You saw it in that Detroit game as well. And I think Provorov is a pretty good ad right now. 12% rostered with how much time he's playing and just how good the Columbus offense is. Like, they're going to continue to score. I think he's absolutely worth an ad in a deep league, or if you're in a pinch for a defenseman. All right, the last guy we're going to be picking up is Barrett Hayton on the Utah Hockey Club. 11% rostered, playing on that second line right now, playing center, having a pretty solid year, definitely a better year than last year. At this point, 60 games played, 16 goals, 18 assists, his 7 power play points, 113 shots, as you can see in the stat bar below. He had a hat trick against LA recently. He had a 2-point night against Minnesota in one of their more recent games. Utah plays 2 games this week. I understand that, but they play 4 games next week in week 21 and in week 23, also 4 games. So something to think about there. Something to think about for sure. He also, throughout the month of February, has led all players in individual expected goals for. That is a massive number at 5.67. So that's more than Matthews at 5.25 and Matt Tkachuk at 4.71 as well. So creating a ton of offense. This Utah team, is starting to click offensively. Some of the younger guys like Dylan Guenther's really starting to perform well. I think Clayton Keller had a 5-point night recently against Minnesota. So a lot of really good offense being created in Utah, and these young players starting to really convert on those chances. Barrett Hayton being one of those guys that's going to continue to create offense for his teammates. He's going to front load on assists, but he can score as well. His shooting percentage isn't that crazy right now, 14%. So at 11% roster right now, with how his role is continuing to grow on this Utah team, I think Hayton is definitely a guy you can kind of bank on to be pretty reliable on or reliable, excuse me, in the fantasy hockey playoffs. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know you thought of must add for week 20 of the fantasy hockey season. As always, shout out to FanDuel Canada for sponsoring the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.